This is the top 100 team for the second rotation of Abyssal AYufi Hall of Trials. We've got the same general strategy going on, where we use a unit with a 2-hit S1 in order to desync the eggs, and we can spam Tenebria S2. The difference is we can't use Champions or Auto again because the team restriction on this rotation is no duplicate classes. So no Champions or Auto will be using either Bomb Model Kanna or Arbiter Viltrid instead. The bad thing here though is their S3s only have 1 debuff, which means that Cecilia's 2 plus 1 means that we only have 3, and we'll need our 4th one to be our Soul Weaver S1. This has happened before when we did the Young Seni rotation, and I guess it's happening again. This means your run is going to be a little bit RNG. Your odds of clearing is going to vary a bit depending on how much your Hazel S1 is enhanced. She has, I think it's 40% base, 20%, it's 30% base. It's 30% base, 20% from her skill enhances, and then 25% from her skill tree, which just... okay, whatever. It's 75% when you add it all up. So if you have 75% here, then the odds of you getting through all 3 break phases is 42%. If you're at base 30%, it's not fantastic, 2.7. Let's say you skill enhance it, you would have 50%. Then it would be 12.5%. And if you have the skill tree but not the skill enhance for some reason, then it's 16. But 75 is what we're aiming for, assuming you have it all maxed out. It's pretty cheap. 42% chance to clear. So let's go ahead and we can take a look at the team. We've got Cecilia, Kanna, Hazel, and Wish of the Mirror Tenebria. Now this is for top 100, of course. If you're going for just top 5%, you can use Mediator Cowrick as a substitute for Wish of the Mirror Tenebria. And if you are using Wish of the Mirror Tenebria and only aiming for top 5%, then you can do this for 1 rotation and you're safe. After you finish the first rotation, just let yourself die, you're gonna be fine for top 5% because you get like 20 million in 1 rotation. The alternatives, it's not fantastic, honestly. For the top 100 setup, besides Kanna, you could use Arbiter Viltrid. It's going to be a little bit different, just because Kanna's S3 gives you speed buff, while Arbiter Viltrid doesn't. So your setup is going to look a little bit different from mine, just with your unit positionings and whatnot. The one nice thing about Kanna, though, is because you get sealed in this fight, you don't have to worry about her S2 enhanced level. It's not going to change anything because she's sealed. She's not getting any bonus speed from her S2. We can't replace Cecilia for the top 100 setup because we need her 2 debuffs, and then Mascot Hazel is just both very cheap and also the best in slot, so we're just going to leave her here too. The only really thing you can change for top 100 is Arbiter Viltrid over Bomb Model Kanna. And for top 5%, you got a lot of options, though I'll cover that in the Cowrick video that I'll put out in a little bit. Let's take a look at their stats now. Let me just start off with Cecilia, actually. So for Cecilia, I have her 214 speed. The speed tuning is, as usual, the most important part. 214 speed, and then just give her some bulk. You could probably drop some bulk for some damage, though I didn't bother optimizing it. And then you definitely want the decreased speed, EE, on her S2. And we are using Card of Small Miracles as her artifact. One thing I'll note is her best in slot artifact is probably Warhorn, but that's something related to the other units, which we'll go over in a bit. For her skill enhances, just make sure you're +4 on S2, and ideally -1 turn on the S3. And then next up is Bomb Model Kanna. With Bomb Model Kanna, I have her at 192 speed. Besides that, I just gave her damage stats because why not? Not really too relevant because almost all of your damage is coming from Tenebria. For her EE, you need the one that gives her unhealable on S2 when using her S3, or unhealable on her S3 when using it for 2 turns, because otherwise you're not going to have a debuff. I didn't even know this EE existed, honestly, but this is the only way we get a debuff on Kanna. I'm using Super Duper Water Shooter, but her best in slot artifact is going to be Renewed Will. Mine is +30, I'm just not going to use it because not everyone's going to have this, and if you don't have it +30, it's going to add a ton of RNG to your run. But you could definitely use that if you do have it +30. Just keep in mind you might need to slow everybody down a tiny bit, or you could just try running it and see if it even changes your run at all. And for her skill enhances, it honestly doesn't matter. This she's sealed. So this was something I was worried about initially. I think I mentioned this already, but I was worried that the speed difference was going to be an issue, but she gets sealed. So it doesn't matter. I don't think this -1 turn matters either, because of the way you proc the eggs. You're going to get a ton of procs. Yeah, you get like -4 turns, so it's not a huge issue. And then you can see here, since the unhealable isn't orange, your unhealable is 100% even if this isn't enhanced at all, if you haven't built Kanna, so you could honestly run her +0. And then we have Mascot Hazel. I've got her at 236 speed, and then just random stats pretty much. For her artifact, I'm using Warhorn, but if you have Queen's Whistle, that's probably going to be your best in slot, because you can move Warhorn over to Cecilia, and then run Queen's Whistle on Hazel instead. Though again, this is going to change your run a lot. It's extra CR push onto Hazel, and your unit positions will all be really different and everything. So we're not going to use that, just because, depending on your limit break too, it'll change how much CR push you get. We're using Warhorn on her instead, and you need her S1 ideally +3 to max the unhealable chance. Max S2 and S3 as usual. And then for her skill tree, we want the free stats, the healing on S2, and for this run, you actually do want this unhealable chance on the S1. Plus, you might as well grab the healing, and then the rest of this probably isn't really that important, but these are usually good for her. And lastly, we can take a look at which of them are Tenebria. So I have her in Grace of Growth, just to max out her S2 for the extra damage chance. And then if you have her imprint, I think you honestly probably can get away with going Team Imprint. Last week, or last rotation, when I was doing it, I needed the HP imprint on my champion Zerato, so he wouldn't die, but whatever works for you, it shouldn't be a huge deal. It's the usual full damage Destro crit with 85% crit chance, since you have elemental advantage onto Abyssal AYufi, and then Cruel Mischief as her artifact. It is worth noting she's 132 speed. I'm not sure if being slightly different speeds will change anything for you, but just going to point this out really quick. That is it for everyone's stats, and now we can take a look at the run. The starting CRs here, looks like everybody was pretty clustered up. Nobody rolled super high, though they did roll a little bit above 0. You can see our starting CRs here. There's only one thing that really needs to happen. It kind of only really involves Cecilia. We're going to start off with Hazel S1, and then Cecilia S3 though. And then Hazel's going to S3 on her next turn. Here, sometimes Kanna goes first, sometimes AYufi goes first. That doesn't really matter, though if Kanna goes first, it's not bad. It might be good if anything. The only thing you have to keep in mind is on this turn, you need Cecilia to go before AYufi does. That could be CR RNG, but if Kanna goes before AYufi on that turn I mentioned, then Cecilia always goes first anyways. That's just so we can get this 60% here. And now we are in the debuff nullifier phase. I'm going to S3 with Tenebria here, just to change her position a little bit. This way she can S2 once we enter the break phase immediately. We'll Kanna S3 here for our first debuff. And then here is the 75% proc. So we got that. Cecilia cuts Tenebria here. This might be RNG. I think maybe if Tenebria super high rolls, but I haven't had any issues here. Just worth keeping that in mind. And then this is our last two, and we are into the break phase. Start off with our first AoE. And then we might as well give the greater attack buff to Cecilia, since Kanna already has it. Not that your S3 is up anyways, but we're going to press S1. This will hit only one of the eggs, and we can use Cecilia S3 to proc it. And now we just double S2. And then we'll Well, at this point everybody has greater attack buff, so we can just give it to Hazel for fun, but we're refreshing the attack buff on Tenebria. Kanna S3 proxy egg, and we'll do our last two Tenebria S2s. Start off with Cecilia S3, just for the immunity. And then I'm going to stall this one turn. One minor issue with my setup here is just this turn that's coming up, where Hazel cuts Tenebria, is a little bit unlucky. Just because this is like super close. Though, because Hazel was double Tenebria speed, it's a bit more speed than you would expect. This means that we lose out on the attack buff for Tenebria's first unboosted S2. So since it's the unboosted one, it's really not that big of a deal, and I'm not too pressed about it. I S3 here just for the cycling. Extra, it's a free 50% CR pretty much. You can see we cycled off our attack buff, so we're not going to have it for our first S2. There's definitely, like, other tunings you can use to get around that, but... $75%. Nice. And then we can S2 here. And we can give the greater attack buff to Cecilia again. I'd estimate, so this happens in phase 3 too, me not having attack buff for the first unenhanced, or the unstealthed S2 without the damage boost. Probably a little under 1 million damage loss, but at least in this one, compared to last time, I actually have attack buff for all of my hits. All of my stealthed S2 hits, since these do by far the most damage, we can do our first two. And again, we'll just greater attack buff Hazel for fun. Pretty much same as phase 2, we're just going to immunity. Hazel's going to wait a turn, we'll S3, Tenebria S3. In here, Tenebria gets cut by Hazel. It's like 4%. We'll S3 for the cycling, so our S2 comes up in time. Last one here. This time we're leading off with the 75%. Luckily we managed to land it. Like that, we're in the final break phase. to Cecilia. You can see this time Cecilia's ahead of Kanna. Since this is the last phase, it doesn't really matter that much. I was tuning it on the other ones so that Kanna would be the final AoE, so Cecilia could actually S3 and give immunity buff, but it's the last one, so it doesn't really matter. I don't know if S2 or S3 does more damage. Almost 80 million. So that's it for the run. Again, this run has room for improvement besides just the obvious me not having attack buff for my unstealthed S2 on phase 2 and phase 3. There's the artifact shifts, but those vary so much. You're adding RNG if your renewed will is not plus 30, and then depending on your ARAM RD level, it's going to change how much CR push you get. So we're not going to use that for this. You could try those out. You'll just have to change your tuning entirely. Plus the RB works fine. He was initially who I was going to use, honestly, but debatable whether people have, or more people have Kanna or RB built, honestly. The only thing is, because RB doesn't give speed buff on his S3, it'll change your tuning a little bit. Otherwise, it should be pretty much the same general concept for the setup.